Former attorney and now president of the Centre of the American Experience, John Hinderaker, thank you so much for your time today. Now, Donald Trump has been charged with 37 felony counts related to these classified documents that he took. How serious are these charges and the allegations?
Well, Maddie, it's potentially serious. To understand it, we really kind of have to go back to the beginning. When presidents and vice presidents leave office, they always take files with them, their files with them, out of the White House. This has been going on for many, many years. Typically, it's to help work on their memoirs. So in the 1970s, Congress passed something called the Presidential Records Act, and it says that when a president leaves office, all of his records, all of his files belong to the federal government, and they go to the National Archives. So when Donald Trump left office, like all these other people before him, including Joe Biden, when he left the vice presidency, he packed up or had somebody pack up 150 boxes, whatever it was, of files from the White House and sent them down to Mar-a-Lago. Now, there's nothing really unusual about that, except that the Democrats are looking for every angle they can to go after Donald Trump. And so they realize he's got these files at Mar-a-Lago that are supposed to be at the National Archives. So the National Archives reached out to Trump and said, hey, we'd like all those boxes. They're supposed to go to us. And for reasons that I cannot explain, Trump would not do that.
Yeah, so the National Archives were chasing Trump, telling him to give them up, which then, you know, they got the DOJ involved, and then which prompted the FBI to look into this and obviously start this investigation. But what you're saying to me is that it's actually pretty normal for former presidents to go against protocol and take these classified documents home with them.
Yeah, that has been a very common practice, and passing the Presidential Records Act didn't actually change it. So what's unusual is the standoff between Donald Trump and the federal government. And there's no question about the fact that he's being treated differently from other politicians. The Democrats are trying to get one thing after another on him. That's all true. But at the same time, I find it very hard to understand, if he wasn't actually trying to get himself indicted, why Donald Trump wouldn't at some point just give the boxes back.
Well, that's what I want to get into, because it's kind of prompts the question of what's the scale of severity when it comes to taking these classified documents. For instance, in the indictment or the reports after, it said that he had hundreds of documents that were taken in relation to US nuclear programs, defense and weapons of the US and other countries, and vulnerabilities of the US and its allies' attack, and how the US would retaliate in response to an attack. So these are pretty serious documents to have taken. Is there a severity of the memorabilia that, you know, a president will take
Well, Maddie,
on?
let me put it this way. They may or may not be important documents. And you raise a great point. And it's important for our viewers to understand this. In Washington, D.C., the habit of over-classifying documents runs rampant. So every time you turn around, if you're looking at documents in the White House, they're stamped classified. They're confidential, they're secret, they're top secret. Millions and millions of pieces of paper are classified. They may or may not be important. And in the indictment that was filed by the special counsel, he tried to make it sound like some of these documents were actually important. Whether they are or not, who knows? And they certainly weren't doing any harm sitting in Trump's basement at Mar-a-Lago. But Maddie, it's worth making this point. If you compare what Donald Trump did with what Hillary Clinton did, setting up an illegal, off-the-books, unprotected server in her house where she was conducting business in real time as Secretary of State, in a situation where the Russians and the Chinese easily could have and very likely did camp on her server and observe what's going on as she's conducting business as Secretary of State. That was 1,000 times times worse than anything that Donald Trump is accused of doing. So when you hear people say that there are two tiers of justice and Trump is being singled out for prosecution, there's no question that that's true.
Yeah, I mean, that has been a big topic of discussion as of late with the FBI and everything to do with, you know, even Biden's allegations of bribery scheme and the two-tiered system. I want to go into what you were saying before about Trump having these, how safe these documents are in their house. Part of the indictment said that he could have shown these sensitive documents to other people. Can you walk me through this?
Well, apparently, people who Trump thought were his friends or his associates were not. It looks as if somebody's even recorded conversations with Trump and turned him over to the special prosecutor. It's all rather sordid, but there are indications, at least it's alleged in the indictment, doesn't necessarily mean it's true, but it's alleged in the indictment that at one point Trump picked up a document. They didn't really show it to anybody, but he said, oh, look at this. This is classified. I'm not really supposed to show this to you, but it says such and such. And obviously that's something that he's not supposed to do as a former president. But here again, nobody ever spied on Joe Biden or put people up to recording conversations with Joe Biden. You can only imagine the things that Joe Biden has said, both after he left as Obama's vice president, even now when he's president.
I want to go into former Attorney General Bill Barr's comments the other day. He said if these allegations against Trump are true, then he's toast. Obviously, they have a tumultuous relationship. We know that. But do you think he's right?
Maddie, we are in uncharted waters. We've never had a former president criminally charged before. Theoretically, this is going to go in front of a jury in Miami, which is a pretty good place for Trump to be, certainly vastly better than Washington, D.C. I think it's impossible to predict how this is actually going to play out. And we have to keep in mind that this is one of several criminal prosecutions that the Democrats either have brought or want to bring against former President Trump. He's already been charged in what I think is a frivolous case in state court in New York, New York City. That case is supposed to go before a jury in March, right as the primary season is heating up, and the prosecutor there wants to try to put Trump in jail on what I think is a really frivolous charge. The same special prosecutor who has charged him with respect to these boxes of documents is investigating his role in that protest. And that's the one the Democrats really care about. They want to prosecute Trump as an alleged insurrectionist. That is really serious business compared to these boxes of documents in his basement. And I think the bottom line at this moment, Maddie, is that nobody knows where this is going to go. We are in completely uncharted waters.
Do you consider this to be a witch hunt like Trump says it is? Do you consider this to just be like another act of the Democrats to stop the former president from running again?
If anything, Maddie, I think they want him to run again. A lot of people are saying that this is the Democrats' ploy to get Republicans to rally behind Trump and nominate him for a third time as a presidential nominee, because he's the one Republican that the Democrats really think that they can beat. I don't know exactly what their thinking is there. In the short term, we are seeing, if you look at the national polls, we're seeing Republicans rallying behind Trump. I do think, one point that I think it's important to make, Maddie, is that, yes, this is political persecution. There's no doubt about it. But at the same time, all of these legal problems that Trump has gotten into, they all stem in one way or another from bad judgment on his part. He's needlessly gotten himself into these issues. And my own opinion is that when we get serious about the primary season, about the Republicans choosing a presidential candidate, I think in all likelihood, they're going to be looking for someone who doesn't carry around the kind of baggage that at this point Trump does. Well,
that's what I want to get into. He's got 37 counts of the classified documents, and then you've got 34 counts of the allegedly falsifying business records. But how does this look for his very big support base of the MAGA Republicans? How does this change for them, or do you think that they'll just stand by him?
Well, we'll find out here, Maddie. I think that Trump clearly has a hard core of support that will never desert him, no matter what. I don't think that hard core is enough to get him the Republican nomination. And what I really think is that by the time we get around to next March, April, May, in the heat of the primary season, just about a year from now, most Republicans will have had enough with these dramas, and they're going to want to look forward, not look back, and go with a new candidate.
Yeah, so you do think that this will negatively impact his campaign? I mean, we're kind of on the verge of campaigning now. It all kicks off pretty much now. But how will this affect next year?
Well, I think it's going to hurt Trump in the end. I like I said, Maddie, all of these problems he's got do result from errors in judgment on his part. I mean, paying off Stormy Daniels, for example. I mean, that's nothing to be proud of, right? And the Republicans have got a number of very, very good candidates who are entering this race. Foremost among them, probably Ron DeSantis. The other thing is that Donald Trump has just turned 77 years old, and we Americans have had a good look at what it's like to have an 80-year-old president, and it's a big problem. I mean, yes, Trump is in a lot better shape than Joe Biden. We're all in a lot better shape than Joe Biden, frankly. But yet, I think Americans are going to be in the mood to nominate somebody new, somebody without the baggage, and somebody who's not going to be serving as president in his 80s.
And there's certainly quite a few to choose from. I mean, the Republican Party has had so many interesting contenders come out, and strong contenders, I'll say, with, backgrounds in politics, bar a few. I want to get into the comparison of Trump's classified documents versus Biden's classified documents. Obviously, he was caught earlier in the year with some at his old office and some at his Delaware home from his time as VP and as a senator back in the day. So how do they compare, do you think?
Well, we don't have any idea in terms of what was in the boxes, but it's safe to say that both of these politicians' boxes were full of classified documents. So you can't get this number of boxes out of the White House. You're going to have a whole bunch of classified documents. The difference is not in what was in the boxes, and the difference is not in the fact that they took them away and brought them home or brought them to their office. The difference is that when it came to light that Biden had been sitting on these files for years and the National Archives asked for them, Biden sent them right in. And Trump, for whatever reason, refused to do that. And that is what led, the statute that Trump is being charged under applies if you willfully retain records that are supposed to be in the National Archives that have something to do with the national defense. Well, what the Department of Justice will say is, well, Biden didn't willfully retain them because he sent them back when we asked for them. Trump is willfully retaining the documents in violation of the statute because we asked for them and he didn't send them back. So that's what this whole mess is all about.
It doesn't make Trump look very innocent, I'll say. John Hinderaker, thank you so much for your time today.
Great to be with you, Maddie.